And we're live. So, welcome, ladies, gentlemen, extraterrestrials, hobbits, and cryptids, to our 7th episode of Scuttlebutt with the Phill on the Fleet Admiral Levi channel. If you're watching us now or in the future, please leave a like, comment, or share it if you liked it. But in reality, subscribe. It really does help the channel. I'm here to say a few things, do a couple of things, and hopefully leave a little of myself to the infamy of the internet. Today, we'll discuss namely a few items regarding the Star Trek franchise. Today is the 58th anniversary of Canadian Star Trek Day. So this is the day that Star Trek aired in Canada. In a couple of days, on September 8th, is the day that Star Trek aired in the United States. And so we won't be celebrating that on this channel because we air these shows on Friday. But we'll be discussing as much as we can tonight on our series. So we have a few of us. We must have lost somebody real quick, but yeah. All right, so it should be everyone. So I think we'll go around the room and just introduce each other, or ourselves. I'll start with myself. I'm Philip Leavenworth. I am a writer and film producer from Long Beach, but currently living in San Diego while I pursue my master's in fine arts and creative writing. I also contribute to Trek Central and a few of other online periodicals, including Sci-Fi Scan, where I am familiar with Dan Leckie, who helped publish an article of mine there and has had me on a few of his podcast episodes. And I'm grateful for him to give me the opportunity. So that's my introduction. So I think we'll go in like a clockwise fashion. So we'll start with Marcelo, then go to John, Dan, and then Mike. So.
Hi, I'm Marcelo. I'm a screenplay writer, a podcaster, and a YouTuber.
Hi there. I'm John or JM Curtin. I'm a Trek Central content writer myself. Day job, insurance adjuster out of Buffalo, New York.
And then Mike.
Hi,
Marcelo.
And I am a live stream co-host on Trek Central and also a Twitch streamer and massive Star Trek nerd.
And then Dan.
I'm a huge fan of Star Trek. I'm the founder of website warfactortrack.com. I'm currently writing for the official Star Trek magazine, Star Trek Explorer. I've studied Star Trek academically at Glasgow College. I've written for Memory Alpha for many years.
And Eve, you're going to introduce yourself and for the audience.
Well, I know Marcelo and I know Dan, so hey to both of you too. Although Dan and I were just talking a little bit ago. I'm Lieutenant Commander Eve Zellick of the USS Lilith, and I'm the director of the Starfleet Academy College of Music. And I'm a lifelong Star Trek fan. This sounds like AA meeting. So I'm Eve and I'm a Trekkie. But yeah, I'm here. And I just want to point out, Canada got Star Trek one day before the US.
Yes. We were pointing that out at the beginning of the podcast that today is actually commemorating the Canadian Star Trek pilot episode release. So yes, you have that over us, the United States. So I'll give you that one. But,
which is fun because Star Trek is very US.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely got its I mean, there's quite a few captains that have that. But okay.
And they're starting to embrace it more now that Strange New Worlds is, made in Canada, and tomorrow is in Toronto. So
yeah, we're starting to get more international representation.
Section 31 movie is filming in Toronto.
Mm-hmm. I think there's a Star Trek Studios now. I think that they kind of had like a photo op in front of it, and so now it's official. So it's very nice.
And Bruce Horak, who plays Hemmer and plays a few other roles. Bruce Horak is actually from where I'm living in Calgary. So yeah, Canada loves our Star Trek.
Very nice. Yeah, I think he was at the Star Trek Las Vegas convention, but I didn't get a chance to meet him. I met a lot of
Too
other.
bad. He's an amazing guy. He's so much fun.
Yeah. If anybody ever goes to the Vegas convention, just holler. I'm probably going to be going for at least the next 3 years, so I definitely recommend it. So the next thing we'll talk about is our favorite series, and we'll kind of go by kind of the same order we just established, so like a clockwise motion around. So I'll start with my favorite series. I've always been a fan of Star Trek Voyager for some reason. I mean, for me, Voyager is it just has that different sort of adventure style to it. For me, it's always fascinated to me how you have like this Federation ship that's stuck 70,000 light years away from Earth, and they're removed from all the other things that we've gotten used to in Star Trek. And one of the games they made that, I mean, it probably doesn't help, but Star Trek Voyager Elite Force was one of my favorite all-time games, and so that game probably helped solidify that love of Star Trek Voyager. And it was probably the first show that I saw airing live when I was younger, so I think that's probably why it's special to me. But,
Voyager Elite Force was just incredible.
Yes,
Absolutely
I know.
incredible.
I even to this day, I probably beat that game 8 times, or even more. But I don't care. I just keep playing it over and over again.
Yeah, and when they patched in the feature where you could explore the ship, it's brilliant.
Yeah.
I'll say Janeway gets a lot. I've seen that Janeway gets a lot of negative comments in the forums, but I think fans are viewing that through the lens of if she was in the Federation in Federation space, and forgetting the fact that since even the original series, there was already established protocols and stuff. And I think Voyager, like Enterprise, gets short stick because people forget that in Enterprise, the Federation didn't exist yet. And so there was no established rules or protocol. And they forget that Janeway's voyage was more like Lost in Space. She was in an unknown area with unknown things, and she was trying to keep to Starfleet ideals and morals, but at the same time, she was also trying to do what was best for her crew, and sometimes that was going to be at odds, and she had to make the best decision that she felt was right in that situation. So I think both of those series kind of get a short stick because people view them through the lens of the original and Next Generation and Deep Space Nine and even Strange New Worlds, where they've had everything set up for them. But what do you do? What do you do when the rule book is not there?
Well, I mean, I've heard somebody say, and I like it a lot, I want to get a shirt where it says there's the right way, the wrong way, and then there's the Jane way. So I want that shirt. And, the guys that join me on Trek Central, we got to kind of con Captain Jack into getting us to do some sort of review for Star Trek Voyager Elite Force at some point. I don't know, we got to pitch that or something. Oh, yeah. But, so I think Marcelo, what's your favorite series?
Yeah, my favorite series would be Star Trek TNG, because I grew up watching the movies so much as a kid, but there was always these in-jokes that I wouldn't understand until years later when I watched the series for the first time all the way through on Netflix. There's this joke in Generations where Data's about to freak out. He's about to have a heart attack of laughter. But before that, he goes to Jordan and he starts laughing maniacally like a psychopath. And he goes, when you and Captain Riker were on the deck of the ship and you were like, the joke for Encounter at Farpoint, I just got that. So that didn't happen for me until I actually watched the whole series. But I think that there's just relaxing ethos to Next Gen that I find comforting, and I rewatched Next Gen probably the most out of any of the Star Trek series.
It's understandable. Yeah. John?
It's like picking a favorite child.
Yeah.
But I would say absolute all-time favorite, at least right now, would be Deep Space Nine, and I just love it because it's one of the first times that we see Star Trek explore war. you know, Captain Sisko is just straight badass, right? Like he takes nothing from nobody, but and on the other hand, you know, the softest, like the softest, warmest person that you can know. I just enjoyed it because Deep Space Nine really explored many facets of Star Trek that we had never seen before. But after that, I do have to say, like, Picard, like, to this day, like, I'll rewatch it, and like that third season, right? I mean, I still get anxious just watching it because it is so good, right? So
Yep.
yeah.
Yeah. No, so it's one of my, you know, they had Terry Metalis at Star Trek Las Vegas, and I wanted to talk to him. But the guys who were ahead of me were the guys from Trek Yards, so I didn't even want to deal with it. I knew they were doing something with him, so I just kind of, you know, avoided that. I planned to go back and talk to him, but when I tried to again, he disappeared. So I wanted to pick his brain about Picard season 3 and see if he could, like, give me any, like, shavings of information of what he wanted to do with Star Trek Legacy, and didn't get a chance to do that. Maybe next year. So Mike, favorite series?
Anybody who knows me will know I'm about to say Deep Space Nine. It's just incredible. You know, I remember I grew up with Next Generation on TV. I remember kind of watching Deep Space Nine, not really getting it as a kid. And then along came Voyager, and Voyager was just totally encapsulating. But as an adult, going back, you know, I've rewatched DS9 like 4 or 5 times at this point. Like, it's just endlessly rewatchable. It's written so incredibly well. Like, the amount of character development that goes into all of those characters in Deep Space Nine, you really do grow personal feelings for all of the cast. So Avery Brooks was incredible as Sisko. In fact, you know, all of the cast, they wrote the best characters. They explored themes like religion, politics, war. You just didn't get it as a kid, but as an adult, it's so groundbreaking. And I think kind of one of the standout moments of DS9 that gets me every time is, spoiler alert, when Dax dies and Sisko leaves DS9 to go back to Earth because he's lost his way. It's so gutting to see Sisko go through that, because he's been such a badass and a you know, a rock up until that point. So yeah, hands down, Deep Space Nine.
Yeah, how dare you spoil something that's almost 30 years old?
Yeah, I know. Well, you say that, but so my Trek Central co-host, Sadie Jarvis, she's only just watching through Deep Space Nine for the first time. Can you imagine how long I've been badgering Jarvis to watch Deep Space Nine? And every day I get several WhatsApps going, "Oh my God, this just happened. Oh my God, this just happened." She's just getting to season 7 now, so she's only just learned that Dax died. I was like, how did you not know about that? Like, how did...
I'm jealous.
Well, I guess I gotta be fair to that.
The spoiler thing is super funny. The spoiler thing is super funny because Dan is here, and Dan is like the walking concordance of Star Trek. So, like, anytime I need an episode title, or I'm like, there was a line in this episode, Dan's like, this show, this season, this episode. So it's funny when you say spoiler alert and Dan's here, because Dan's like literally the encyclopedia of Trek.
It's funny, like, how can you exist in the Star Trek sphere and not know any of the Dax stuff? Even the behind the scenes stuff, like that's pretty famous in kind of behind the scenes lore. Yeah.
I mean, for me, I'm working my way through through Next Gen with my fiance, and we just started season 5. And my plan is, when we start season 6, to watch season 6 of TNG and Star Trek, or Deep Space Nine, season 1 concurrently, as we were, you know, as you would have back in the 90s. So we'll see if I can achieve that, but that's going to be an interesting thing. But I think Dan's next.
I agree with the comment that it's basically like trying to choose between your kids. It's a really difficult choice, but I was thinking to myself, probably Enterprise I've watched loads of, and I really loved. I bought all the scripts, so I really enjoyed like rewatching it, like going through all the scripts of the show. I really like Dr. Phlox, and going back to the triumvirate of to like three main characters basically with Trip, T'Pol, and Archer. And I really liked what they planned behind the scenes, like the plans that they had for season 5, like bringing Shran on and stuff like that. I really found the behind the scenes plans really interesting. So Enterprise, I'll nominate.
Okay. Enterprise was the first Star Trek show I watched all the way through. I mean, that was the first time I was able to watch season 1 through, season 4 to the finale, and then, that was that. But we'll talk, the finale of Enterprise is, everybody knows. But, we'll leave that to a couple weeks from now when I talk about Star Trek Enterprise. But if anybody wants to come back on for that show, I definitely would. You're more than welcome to. But
I think everybody wants to poll in Strange New Worlds as well.
Yeah.
Well, that's going to be interesting. But fingers crossed. But I think we'll move on to Eve. I think you're the last one to go.
Okay. So if you would have asked me a few years ago, I would have said hands down Deep Space Nine. But nowadays, it's totally a tie for me between Deep Space Nine and Lower Decks. Deep Space, like I saw what we would call the classic, the classic treks up to Voyager. I saw them in syndication. I was too little, like I was a baby when Next Gen came on. So Enterprise was the first one I saw all the way through as it aired. But Deep Space Nine, to me, like I love the idea that we got to see, because they were forced to do that writer's concept of people in a room. So you have to actually work with the people. You can't just be like, oh, they're on this alien planet, or here's the monster of the week or whatever. Like they had to deal with the people. So Klingons pre DS9 were still very two-dimensional. Ferengi were a joke. And so with Deep Space Nine, we got to see like Klingon culture really fleshed out, both through the eyes of Jadzia and through Worf actually, getting less like he's got a stick where it doesn't belong. I'm sorry, but I'll never forget Guinan's line about, you don't laugh, but Klingons do. Like, I'll never forget that. But like we got to see like species that were otherwise major players, but up until then had not really been fleshed out. So I love that aspect. I love that Avery Brooks' portrayal of Cisco as a widowed, single African-American father. I mean, that was considered to be one of the best and one of the first, I think it was one of the first really good portrayals of not only a single father, but a single father from the African American community, because honestly, up till then, we only had portrayals of African American fathers where they were still married and in a family unit, like Family Matters and shows like that. We hadn't really gotten to see one as a single father, which unfortunately people do often still view that not necessarily in the best light they should. I'm trying to be politically correct here, so bear with me. But we had a really good portrayal. Okay, we had a really good portrayal of a single dad who's just trying to find his way, make his way, and he turns from this guy that Starfleet put out to pasture into this complete, war captain who's he's manipulating Quark. He's playing mental chess with Gul Dukat. He's fighting on the front lines. But I'm tied with Lower Decks now, because for me, Lower Decks is a way I've gotten a lot of friends into Star Trek that otherwise would not have been into Star Trek. For me, I love all the Easter eggs. I love all the references back. I love all the in-jokes. But it's been a great way for me to connect with friends who otherwise have been like, ugh, Star Trek. And then I'm like, no, watch Lower Decks and you will be entertained. And I have to say, the stuff they're doing on that show and all the guest appearances and cameos, like the Deep Space Nine episode, where they're like, go around again. Like, like to me, they're tied because Lower Decks really understands the fandom, but Deep Space Nine will always be my GOAT because we got so much character development. We got so much story that we wouldn't have had. Like, I mean, how many heartbreaker episodes are there in Deep Space Nine? And I'm going to bring up in the It's Only a Paper Moon because R.I.P. James Darren, he just passed away.
Yeah.
How many of us sat there and didn't think, wow, he is Sinatra personified? Like,
Well,
and
I
think,
his role
funny you mentioned that.
was amazing. His role was amazing on that show. Like the idea of a hologram that's almost semi-sentient. I mean, to me, that was a lead into the Voyager's Doctor.
That worked out, yeah. You know, a hologram that wasn't trying to take over the station, or you know, plant computer viruses or whatever, you know.
Yeah.
But I mean, like he was such
John,
a,
who did
he was
the
such a
article on
central
Trek
part.
Central, right?
Yeah, and he was such a central part of the show. I mean, I first heard about the news of his passing from a friend who had showed me a link to Nancy Sinatra's website where she had posted about his passing. So that alone says what kind of impact he had. And I mean, he had some of the best episodes, like, Paper Moon, Bada Bing, Bada Boom. I think that's what it's called. The one where they all like infiltrate the casino, like Ocean's 11. Like but he really he brought another dimension to like the holodecks, which in Next Generation, the holodecks were mostly Barclay's fantasies or, adventures. And we all know what Quark was selling them for because he wasn't hiding it, but he actually brought a humanity to even that side of things. And to me, that made the Voyager's Doctor later on more believable. The idea of an AI being more than the source of their programming. So I think Deep Space Nine opened some doors that otherwise might not have been as open later on.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. I don't know. I don't know if it makes sense.
No, I
adore Lower Decks. It's Lower Decks for me is almost tied with DS9 as well, because Lower Decks is just made with so much love.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've been
so easily watchable.
I think my fiance is interested in Star Trek now because of the Moopsie. So I think that's
Star
why
Trek
I'm able to go
Pokemon.
through it. Yeah, there you go. I mean, we saw a few of them at the Star Trek Las Vegas convention. There are people, I guess, like making them or like little plushies of them, and I think there was one person dressed up as a Moopsie, and I thought that was interesting. But no, I mean, I actually have a shirt, the Lower Deck shirt that I got from the convention.
So nice.
My favorite episode
Picard.
of all time.
I'm sorry, I'm wearing Picard.
So
but
I think my favorite episode of Star Trek all time
the Moopsie is cute. The Moopsie is cute. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Mike.
It's like I'm trying to think of what my favorite Star Trek episode was of all time, but it was whatever it was dethroned by those old scientists, the Lower Decks and Strange New Worlds crossover.
It
is hands down my favorite episode of Star Trek.
I'll be honest. Part of the reason I was super stoked for Lower Decks is I'm a fan of I don't know if you guys know the show The Boys on Amazon.
Yeah.
It's got
Huey.
It's Huey, and it's got Carl Urban from the JJ verse. So when I heard that Jack Quaid was going to be in Lower Decks, okay, this is going to be cool. And then when they did Those Old Scientists, I remember seeing an interview with Jack Quaid, and he said the hardest thing about voice acting is you don't always know what your character is doing on screen. And he said for that episode, he actually had to go back and watch a lot of episodes of Lower Decks because he wanted to imitate Boimler's, quirks and his twitches and how he is. He wanted to be able to imitate that, and how he had to go back and watch it just to be able to do that.
He nailed it. He got the physicality of that character down to a T. The scene in that episode where Una is talking to Mariner and Boimler, and he just scurries off. The way he wiggles his hips as he runs away is just absolutely brilliant.
Yeah.
He's such an incredible actor.
Yeah, it's a chef's kiss, really. But
honestly, I saw parallels to First Contact in that episode, like how Geordi, for instance, has this huge hero worship of Zephram Cochrane, only to be faced with the reality of who Zephram Cochrane really was. And so for me, I saw some parallels there where Boimler was seeing like, okay, Pike's a hero to him, and you know, he's in love with number one because he's got that poster, you know, but him also getting to meet his heroes and seeing his heroes as human beings. Like I saw some parallels there, like the idea of, you know, what if we met our heroes from the past? What if we really did? Like
stuff in that episode is just absolutely perfect because, like, not only was it so lower decks, but they just tied it into Strange New Worlds and what each of the characters was dealing with in that moment just perfectly. Like it was, I never imagined on paper it would ever work, but they absolutely smashed it.
Honestly, I thought that one would work. The one episode you'll never get me to rewatch again is the Subspace Rhapsody. That one, no.
No, I thought you were going to say Code of Honor.
I was just like dying of laughter. That entire episode, especially when the Klingons were singing, I was like, "Oh my god!"
Yeah,
I think that's the moment that I thought
the reference to Buffy in that music.
Is it? Shouldn't the Klingons sing like Norwegian death metal or something like K-pop boy band? Like,
now, I have like a huge. I have a pretty sizable screen. So when I was watching the episode for the first time, though, and if anybody watches it again, watch closely to the Klingon scene. The background of the Klingon bridge is clearly a backdrop. It is so obviously a backdrop. It was very cheaply done.
Well, I think it's very purposeful because the background moves back as well to like make room for them dancing. Like it's all very musical theater.
Yeah.
I'll be honest. I did write an article. I think Dan saw it. I can't remember. I did write an article from a musician and musical theater perspective as to why that episode doesn't work. And my general conclusion is if they had done it in lower decks, it would have been brilliant and it would have totally worked. But Strange New Worlds is too much of the original series and too serious for it to really work. Because, I mean, there's no way a crew would let their captain embarrassingly sing about his love life in front of the crew. It just wouldn't happen. Like, in lower decks,
but
yes.
They did also do the Elysian Kingdom, which is also quite ridiculous.
Yeah,
true.
That's true.
Well,
but that one was a little more fun, at least.
Well, it's funny you say that because I've noticed, like, on going by IMDb ratings and stuff like that, it's like the least popular episode of season 1. Yeah, I know like they recorded a Klingon opera version of the Klingons scene in Subspace Rhapsody, which I'd love to see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well,
yeah,
I
just think they really dropped the bomb.
Acid punk.
Yeah. No, I don't want to get too.
I love. Listens to.
Yeah. No, I don't want to get. I love having conversations like this that are kind of organic, and so I don't want to cut this off. But I forgot about a question that I wanted everybody to ask. So I wanted to ask about everybody's favorite captain, and then it doesn't have to be exclusive from the show that you picked as your favorite. It can be from any other show. But one of the questions I did forget about was favorite starship, because I think that's just a given. So we'll do the same kind of order. We'll do favorite captain, and then we'll do starship, and then we'll do kind of a captain death match, and there's a lot of Deep Space Nine representation, so I think I'm thinking I already know who's going to win, but we'll just see what happens. So we'll go by the order we've been going, and we'll start with favorite captain. So my favorite captain just so happens to be from the same show that I enjoy a lot, and that's Captain Janeway. I do think I have to credit Captain Janeway with sort of my perceptions of how I've always viewed women in power. And so it's never really been a question for me that a woman could be in charge of anything. So when I see men in certain positions of power that feel threatened by women in charge, I'm kind of baffled. I'm like, what? Like, why does that bother you? And so, kind of like trying to unlearn what I know now as an adult is kind of fascinating to me, and then learning how that's a perspective that's shared by a lot of men is quite alarming to me. But now Janeway is my favorite, and that'll probably stay that way. Marcelo?
My favorite captain, I can't believe I'm saying this because considering where I began with her was a completely different story. My favorite captain in Star Trek ever is Michael Burnham. Just that character journey that they kind of didn't have in the cards for Michael was really, really interesting. I really connected with Sonequa Martin Green's sincerity and the way that she played the character, and for an actress to make me want to throw her in the brig for about 2 seasons, but then to slowly fall in love with her performance as a character was just outstanding. And I think that's twofold: the writing, and the characterization that Sonequa Martin Green gave the character. So for that reason and a bunch of other ones, my favorite captain of all time is Michael Burnham.
I think the send-off they gave her at the end of Discovery Season 5 was incredible. They did so well with them reshoots. They were absolutely perfectly done.
Yeah. I think and also this was something that I used to hate about Michael. I was like, well, not hate about Michael. I just find it so awesome that she was the first person of color to commit a goddamn mutiny on a starship before. like the pure balls on this woman to do that is crazy, and like it's just amazing.
No, it's true. Yeah, John?
Oh, well, favorite captain. I mean, obviously, like I said before, love Deep Space Nine. I love Cisco, but I've really enjoyed Captain Pike in Strange New Worlds because it really expanded on his story. Then they really found the perfect actor for him. Right? I mean, right down to the hair, to the mannerisms. You can actually look at Captain Pike, who was older in the J.J. Abrams movies, and it's plausible that could be in an older version of this Captain Pike that we see on the original Enterprise, and you know, written so well to uphold the values of Star Trek and to bolster that human element into things. Just all around really great character. I'm really looking forward to the next season. Like with much anticipation.
Yeah, he was there at the convention too. I didn't get a chance to meet him either. I did it bad over there. I guess I didn't meet anybody. No,
he's a sweetheart in real life, but I can tell you he's very shy in the convention circuit. He gets he one of his first conventions was right when he did the episode of Discovery, and Dan, you will know the episode, so you'll have to help me out. It's the episode that was at the end of a season of Discovery where he sees his future with the Klingon time crystal. And Calgary Expo was one of the very first conventions he did right after that aired, because they were sending him and Ethan Peck on the convention circuit to see if there was traction for a show. And he's a very sweet guy in real life, but you can tell he gets he seems like like the crowds is a little bit overwhelming. I think he was very quiet, but he was very, very nice, and he was very, very gracious. So yeah, he's a great guy, but he literally did that convention within like a week or two of that episode airing. So
yeah, I mean, hopefully next year I get a chance to meet him. That'd be nice. I did get a photo with Christopher Lloyd and William Shatner, and that was still baffles me. I got that done. Not cheap, but I'm happy that I have that. But
not cheap.
Mike.
It's got to be Cisco, isn't it? Yeah, it's got to be Cisco. It is a tie between Pike, Cisco, Picard, but Cisco for me, like you've said, he was this such a different kind of character that we'd seen on Star Trek before. African American, single father, widowed, and he found this new purpose. He's other than Janeway going to the Delta Quadrant, his role as emissary to the prophets and political figure in Bajor and Starfleet commander and captain, and then key strategist in the Dominion War. That man had an incredible amount on his plate, and of course he met Cassidy Yates, which was a beautiful romance to watch unfold on screen. His arc from start to finish has just been incredible. And his how close he grows with Major Kira. There's an earlier episode of Deep Space Nine where Kira's like, why do you keep your distance from me? Is it because you're uncomfortable with religion? And then after that episode they become so much closer, and you just see them become this absolute powerhouse of a command structure, and it's just fantastic.
That's a good answer. Dan?
Does it need to be like a main character?
It doesn't need to be, but I mean, it's a favorite captain, so usually that means the main character. But if not, and you think of captains that's interesting, that's like not always on the main screen, you can definitely choose that.
I was going between like Burnham, whose character arc I love, and basically 7 of 9.
Mm-hmm.
But she's a very new captain. Just made captain at the end of the cards. But I love her character arc as well. And I thought as well, like the relationship between her and Raffi was really portrayed very well. Definitely like the start of it.
Yeah, they got a bit lost in the middle, didn't it?
Well, I could see potential between the characters, and I think that's like an important like aspect of like, can you like as to like whether relationships you think work well or not. I think that one did, because personally, like I could see potential between them. The chemistry, I guess, is I loved as well like that she is made captain of. 7 is made captain of the Enterprise, G, and G is the 7th letter of the alphabet, and like the Enterprise originally in the Next Generation was to be the Enterprise 7 behind the scenes before it was renamed Enterprise D. So I thought like all of that was pretty cool. Synchronicity, basically.
Yeah, I can agree with that. Eve.
First, I'm just going to throw a quick nod to Dan on the comment about 7 and Raffi. I know that was one of those things that caused a lot of controversy in some of the Star Trek forums. Like people are like, why are those two being shipped or whatever? And I'm like, it kind of makes sense because last I checked, the Borg don't have gender division. And 7 at her core, while she's become way more human, at her core, she still has some Borg identity because she was assimilated as a child. So to me, I was just like, of course, 7's not going to see gender lines. So some of the comments people have made about those two are absurd, because I'm like,
I think maybe like the there's not gender for the Borg drones, but then also like obviously there's Borg Queen.
There's a Borg Queen, but yeah, but I mean, the Borg don't even reproduce the way we do. So to me, it's like 7 would not have. Again, I'm trying to be careful what words I use, but 7 would not have necessarily. She would not have specific romantic inclinations based on human thoughts and morality. Like to me, she's a little bit more like Captain Jack Harkness in Doctor Who, where he says one time, he's like, it was the 52nd century, nobody cares. Like to me, that's just how I see 7. But moving on, for me, it's a tie between Cisco, because Cisco has an amazing character arc. I mean, he's shelved. They put him out to pasture. And all of a sudden, he ends up in the middle of this war he didn't ask for. He ends up finding out he's basically Bajoran Jesus. which initially he uses for his own gains, but over time you can see him understand and respect that this is something more than what he thought. And his relationship with Major Kira, like Cisco and Kira, to me, are one of the best captain and first officer teams, because even from that first episode, she's in his face and he meets her energy. Well, he acknowledges what she's been through. He acknowledges who she is. And he's just trying to tell her, like, hey, we got to work together. Let's make this work, you know? And he's kind of put in this situation that he never wanted, he never asked for. Starfleet's given up on him. And by the end, he's become, you know, this war hero. He's become this stellar captain. But to me, it's a tie between him and Captain Shaw, because Captain Shaw never wanted to be a captain. Captain Shaw never asked to be thrown in the middle of a conflict. He was a grease monkey from Chicago. I mean, we literally see him give the figurative middle finger to Picard and Riker, who are Starfleet royalty, and he basically tells them in that one word, no. And yet,
it's birthed one of the best memes ever.
It is.
Yeah.
And the second Geordi shows up, he's like fangirl. He's like, oh my God, you're my hero. I like, you know, you, and he even says like he never wanted to be a captain. He never sought command. He just wanted to be an engineer. But because of Wolf 359 and everything, Starfleet punched through a bunch of people, and he was just put in that situation. And while he was really hard and brutal to 7 of 9, we know that for the most part, captains choose their first officers. Even Cisco said he chose Major Kira because he wanted somebody from Bajor to be his first officer. We know that captains choose their first officers. So obviously he had a say in 7 being his first officer. And I think he was hard on her in a way that Cisco came down on Nog. Because initially Cisco, like when Nog applied to Starfleet, what did Cisco do? Cisco ripped him a new one. He like laid into him until Nog finally stood up for himself and came into his own. And then Cisco said, okay, you know? And so to me, Shaw did that too. He came down on 7 because he knew what she was capable of, and he wanted to bring that out in her. But he knew that the only way he could do it was to be a hard butt. And at the very end, when he turns it over and he says Captain 7, like that right there to me was reminding of when Nog stands in Cisco's office, you know, begging to be in Starfleet, and Cisco's telling him, why do you want to be in Starfleet? And he's like, I don't want to be my father. Like, to me, there was several parallels between Shaw and 7 and the way Captain Cisco dealt with things. So for me, Shaw had a very good character arc in one season, which is incredible. And no disrespect to Cisco, he had 7 seasons. But to me, it's a tie between the two of them because they are both not what we think of when we think of Starfleet captains. I mean, we think of captains, we think of Captain Kirk the Maverick or Captain Picard the diplomat. We don't think of Captain Cisco, who has to manipulate and, you know, connive, and like in the Pale Moonlight has to resort to downright like sabotage and subterfuge. And then we see Captain Shaw never wanted to be in the role, but he's stuck in this role and he's doing the best he can. And he's just, you know, responding to things as they happen. And he responds really, really well. So to me, it's a tie between those two because one we only had for 1 season, one we had for 7 seasons, but they were both like, to me, they were both what a Starfleet captain really is when things come down to the wire and you have to put skin in the game.
Yeah,
I think as well with Cisco, he's the only one really, or he was the first at least, who sacrificed himself, who potentially died, who had an ominous fate at the end of the season. That's one hell of a cliffhanger, I believe, especially for a character who's been that groundbreaking. Yeah, I think that was wild.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think it's interesting that Eve picked 2 of the characters who have such a very strong, like, core memory with, you know, Locutus at Wolf 359. I think that's interesting because, you know, obviously the scenarios. But I mean, I've always kind of thought that I mean, I don't. I mean, personally, I love the next gen movies. I think they're very entertaining, but I feel like they're not very good at representing the cast of next gen. Because I feel like in First Contact, Captain Picard acts way out of character, and I feel like the character he acts or kind of portrays in that movie is how I think Cisco would have actually portrayed himself if he was, if he hadn't had to fight the Dominion in Star Trek Deep Space Nine, but instead had to fight, let's say, like the Borg. I mean, there's a few comic book series that have been released in, the last 30 years about it, where I think one of them is called the Looking Glass War, and in it talks about the Borg being the ones that take over Deep Space Nine, and there's like a Borg war going on. I thought that was sort of an interesting way to showcase that whole thing, because I feel like Deep Space Nine was kind of teeing itself up for that. Instead, Voyager took all the Borg glory, and I think that's a little. But that's just my opinion. The next question.
I will say, I gotta say this one thing. Cisco knew how to deal with Q. I love the internet memes about how Picard played games with Q. Janeway had to deal with Q flirting. Cisco just gives him a punch to the face and it's over. Like,
I actually wish that we would have seen him more in the Deep Space Nine. But really, what was it? One episode, two? That
one episode
for Deep Space
yeah,
Nine.
it was just the one. I guess it was just one punch and he's out, right? So
yeah, I think he was in like 2 or 3 episodes of Voyager, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
He was in a couple of them because he flirted with Janeway off and on, but I just love the fact I will never forget one of the first episodes of Deep Space Nine I saw was the one with Q, and I remember him standing there in the boxing ring and he punches Q and he goes, "You hit me. Picard never hit me," and he goes, "I'm not Picard." It's like,
well, the funny thing is they did want Q to appear more in Deep Space Nine, but his appearance in early Deep Space Nine was so negatively received because I think in that early stage of Deep Space Nine, they'd thrown loads of like TNG cameos in there, and people were just like, "We don't need this. We just want to see this show stand on its own." And Voyager as well broke different ground because they brought in Q's son, which was actually John Delancey's son, which is hilarious.
Yeah,
and was always fun to watch.
Well, but I had
to be honest, I think Picard dropped the ball. Picard should have had Q's son at the end.
Voyager had the same criticism of people sort of complaining, like, we've been here, done that, like with Talik Gamora and Romulan and different aspects from like the Alpha Quadrant and stuff. They're like, we've been here before.
No, I can see that.
I will stand by my opinion. Picard, the finale Picard, spoiler alert, but I think we've all seen it. They should have had Q's son there talking to Jack Crusher. To me, that would have totally rounded it out to have the sons now engaging in that game. It would have, to me, that would have made way more sense.
Yeah, that would be great. I think I can't remember his name, but John Delancey's son, he doesn't act anymore.
Keegan Delancey.
Yeah, I don't think he acts anymore, which is a shame.
No, but it just would have been good because it would have been like a complete full circle that way.
Yeah, I mean, there's always recasting, I guess, but
he showed up recently in some of the Star Trek comic series.
Yeah,
does he?
I think there's like the Sons of Star Trek or something. I think.
Yeah,
I forget what the comic is called, but I think there's a part of it where Mariner is talking about like trying to round up all the nepo babies, which I think is funny. But yeah, so the next
she would call them
question,
that too.
Yeah, the next and final question is favorite starship. So for me, I'm a very big fan of the Enterprise D. I'm of the opinion that Galaxy class supremacy. So if not, I'm really curious to see what everybody else's pick is. So
you like the fat one. You like the fat one.
The fat duck.
That's still rude.
It's a direct quote. It's a direct quote from the show.
Yeah,
it happens in Picard. So that's why I'm going with the quote. Like when it's like you like, oh, the fat ones. Like I laughed because I didn't realize how chunky it looks.
Yeah, I think that's why I like it. I don't know. But yes, Marcelo.
My favorite Enterprise is the Enterprise E.
Enterprise E.
Yeah, Enterprise E. Yes.
Okay.
And the reason why I like it is it looks cool, and it was in Star Trek First Contact. So yeah.
Yeah, the later TNG movies.
Yeah, and I love the bridge layout and sort of the purpleness of it, the deep purples. Like I just like it for those reasons.
Yeah, it's understandable. John.
Well, like if I had to choose a ship, to let's say somebody was to ask me, if you were to choose a ship that you would want to command, I would want like the newest, the greatest thing, the Enterprise G, right, with all the tech and all that. But visually though, the Enterprise A, or even actually just the refit that we see in the first few original movies. Just aesthetically, it is just a beautiful ship, right? Just I built a 1/350th scale model, and just it's the shapes are basic, but the contours and the detail and such. I can't I can't exactly explain why. I just think it's just a really nice ship to look at. So.
Yeah. Well, I think John's going to have to get going pretty soon, but I wanted to get your vote. So, what did you? Are you solid on your choice of Pike for your Captain Death match?
Yes.
Okay, we'll keep that in mind.
All right, sounds good.
We'll see you later, John. Have a good one.
Thank you.
See you, John.
Bye, John.
All right. So, Mike, what's your favorite starship?
So, mine is a tie between the Enterprise E, because it is sleek, it is futuristic, it is a badass ship. First Contact, that ship is just beautiful to look at. And then, of course, no surprise, the Defiant. The Defiant it was the one ship that really broke kind of typical Starfleet conventions. The fact that they mothballed it because they couldn't control the power on it. I found that fascinating, and the number of scraps that ship gets into in the Dominion War is amazing. Obviously, we see it get destroyed, which is pretty heartbreaking. Yeah, I love the Defiant.
Okay, yeah, I think the Defiant's probably a very close 2 for me in terms of my favorite starships. Just, I don't know. In my view, I mean, it's kind of funny because I picked the Enterprise D, but I do prefer like smaller ships for like smaller crews, and then I like the idea of having like a smaller ship to go out and do like random exploration scouting missions. But yeah, whenever I do an RPG, I got to figure out how to do that. But
and an honorable mention goes to the Voyager A. That ship is absolutely gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous.
It's a solid pick. Still got to finish Prodigy, but Prodigy Season 2. So I think that means Dan?
So are you asking favorite ship, or can it be a class of ship?
I'll open it up to the class of ship too.
Okay, probably then Excelsior class. I love the sleek design lines of the Excelsior. I love the first time you see it, basically in the sort of stock, it's not worth its metal basically because it breaks down. And then you see it as Captain Sulu's ship, and then after and the Enterprise B, of course, in Generations, a bit modified, and then inclusion in so many battles in Deep Space Nine, and basically so many times it shows up in the Next Generation. So I really love that class of ship, and love the colorization of it, and all the blue and white. I love that. But
the Excelsior too as well.
I love also the Klingon Bird of Prey. I was thinking about that and thinking of how the history of ships. I thought it's pretty cool. You've got Voyager, whose warp nacelles move, and I think the Klingon Bird of Prey probably was the first one where part of the ship actually moved with the wings. So I really like the Klingon Bird of Prey as well.
Okay. Solid choices, though. Eve.
I'm going to throw another nod at Dan here about the bird of prey, because in Canada there's a running joke that the Klingon bird of prey was modeled on the Canada goose, because Canada geese are evil.
Yeah.
Because if you live here, you know how evil a Canada goose is. If you don't know how evil they are, literally go on YouTube and look up Canada goose, and you can see them. They're completely evil, and those birds weigh up to 100 pounds. Like, they're not small, and they're complete jerks. So to me, like, I have to throw that nod at Dan for the bird of prey, because I was thinking about bird of prey, because yeah, here we joke that they're modeled on the Canada goose. But for me, I'm going with the Discovery. One, I like the idea how it spins before it goes to before it goes on the mycelial network. Like when they activate this, I love that idea that it spins, because the idea of a ship with moving parts, like Dan said, like, I love the idea of a ship with moving parts. Plus, I love the idea of a completely different drive that they tried, but then later mothballed for various reasons. Because to me, that fits more with the theme of space exploration, whereas we go from the original series all the way up to modern, and it's always antimatter and dilithium crystals. You know, I like the idea that there was ships out there that were usable, that had different technologies. Plus, I'm a little bit of a Dune fan. So to me, the mycelial network, and later Stamets putting the DNA in himself, and those, I don't know what you call them, like metal contacts or whatever, in his arms, so he could control the ship himself. It reminds me somewhat of the navigators in Dune, how they need the spice to navigate. So when they first mentioned the mycelial network, I'm like, this is like Dune. Like, there's something organic there that moves the ship. And I love how they really explored, like, they did it a little bit in TNG, I think, where they explored how going warp 9 was ruining certain areas of space. But they only kind of brushed on it, and then it was kind of forgotten after that, because we see them going warp 9 all the time after that. But I love the idea how they went in Discovery and made entire episodes around, like, okay, yeah, we have this technology, but we didn't know this technology was causing problems not only for the tardigrades, which is why Stamets, implanted himself, but we go with that. Plus, we go with the idea that it's damaging to a life form that we didn't know. So I like the implications of that, but I also love when the Discovery gets all its upgrades in the recent season, like when they're in the 31st century or whatever, and they get all those super cool upgrades, like they punch a button and everything comes up and it's just floating in the air and everything. Like, to me, that's, I'm not trying to, I know Star Trek was ahead of its time, but I look at like the data pads and I'm like, iPad, we've had that for like 20 years. Like, it just seems so old now, whereas Discovery technology seems so, like, even in the first season of Discovery, the technology still seems so new and cutting edge compared to what we have now. So I'm going with the Discovery hands down.
Well, I think that's a solid choice. Well, it would appear that on my little Captain Deathmatch list, we have Janeway with a 1 vote, Burnham with 1 vote, Sisko with 2. I'm not going to do a half. Even if you pick like 2 captains, I'm going to just count it as 1.
Mm-hmm.
And Pike with 1. That was John's pick. Burnham actually has 2. I'm sorry. And then 7 of 9 had 1. So we actually have a tie between Sisko and Burnham.
Well, I'm going to change to Burnham for the death match. If that's all right. If it's all right, I'll change to Burnham for the death match.
Okay,
I'm staying Sisko. I love Burnham, but I'm staying Sisko because he was the first Starfleet captain of all the captains where I was like, okay, this is somebody I can really like give a crap about. I'm not trying to be rude, but Captain Kirk he's not relatable for me. I get that he was great for the time. He was great for the 60s. It totally made sense. He's not relatable to me. And Picard, he's a good captain, but he doesn't have as much. To me, he doesn't have as much humanity as Cisco does. He's less flexible. He works within a structure because the structure works for him. Cisco, to me, was a little more like, okay, everything's gone to heck. What do I do now? Like, so I'm not changing from Cisco. I'm not budging.
Good. So with that, we have 2 votes for Cisco, which automatically means that Cisco is the one that wins our captain's death match. So we'll see if that changes in another year when we try to do this again. But no, I think this was a really great show. I'm glad everybody showed up, and I hope everybody had fun. I hope everybody tries to join us again for the Star Trek Enterprise retrospective episode that I want to do for September 20th, same time. I hope everybody can make it for that. If not, that's perfectly fine. There'll be plenty of more episodes that'll be coming in the coming months and weeks ahead. So
I'm sorry, my internet kept cutting out and I had to keep coming back in. I don't know what the heck's going on.
No, it's perfectly fine. I was able to add you to the stage, so that's perfectly fine.
I'm sorry. I'll figure it out for next time.
It's very Canadian of you to be sorry, but I appreciate you.
I actually just had to explain that to a friend of mine in the US. He's always like, stop saying sorry, stop saying. I'm like, it's Canadian. We say sorry for everything. If I say excuse me to you in the store to walk past you, I'm also going to say, I'm sorry. It's just Canadian.
Yeah. Well, like I said, no need to apologize there. But anyway, I'll be closing out our show in a bit. You can hang out for a little bit before, once the live stream is cut. But I'll just be closing out the show for a minute. So let's do my sign off. So next week we'll be diving into Space 1999, and hopefully I'll be able to ask a few people to show up. We'll see if they do. September 20th will be our Star Trek Enterprise Anniversary retrospective, so I hope everybody joins us for that. And then on September 27th, I'm going to be doing my first exploration of my world building project called From the Earth to the Stars, and I hope everybody can join us for that. So anyway, without further ado, until next time, keep the ravioli in orbit and don't take money from a man named Jack.